And if it's by some miracle it's a draw for white, then the same guys would tweet, what an amazing mistake by Magnus Carlsen. He went for it and missed a draw. So we don't know. I do believe, though, that he did calculate it.
Yes, they are just so fast. I think we can't understand the speed that is going on in their brains. So these top players are just really quick.
Okay, and already an original opening from Magnus Carlsen. Well, Trumpovsky we've seen in his match against Karyakin, but to play e3 and c3 is something new, I would say. Queen b6 from Alexander Morozevich, immediately attacking b2 pawn, queen c2. And now, look, there is a one standard maneuver, bishop. Now, it will probably be played. No, it will not. In some positions, that would be bishop f5, you know, with knight on b1.
Oh.
Bishop f5, so that queen takes f5, queen b2. But we had a position with knight on b8 and knight on b1. So bishop f5, queen f5, queen b2, you're happy, you're winning the rook, queen c8 mate. Yes, that's what I was... that's what I wanted to talk about. Bishop g4, developing the bishop to play e6, and the bishop, the light square bishop, will be active. Now, what Magnus is going to do? Not that his position after the opening is any impressive, and he tends to spend time. We used to see him playing those offbeat lines, right? But usually he's the one to be prepared well for this. He's the one to have more time on the clock. So now he will most certainly take on f6, I think, at least to double the pawns. Otherwise, I don't see any reason for white to go for this position. 2 minutes only. No, he didn't take, which is somewhat surprising. So he castles, and bishop e7 looks like a logical move for Alexander Morozevich, and it was played. Bishop e7. If you want to ask if there is any advantage for white, the answer is no. Not at all.
I think in case of Magnus Carlsen, he doesn't really care whether there's a real advantage. He just wants a playable position. And this is going to be a long game, I believe. Unless suddenly it becomes sharp. Do you see any danger?
Knight f4, knight d3. I don't really... No, I don't think it will become sharp just yet. But okay, Magnus manages to create some sort of attention. cd4, ed4, and now we are getting Magnus's favorite Carlsbad with his knight on d3 all of a sudden. So reversed Carlsbad, of course, with colors reversed. Queen d1 back because knight d4 was a threat. Queen d1. Bishop to d6, allowing bishop f6, and there was such game in Rapid, right, where Mamediyarov allowed Carlsen to take on f6, and he had to regret it after some moves. So, and the knight is taken, queen went to h5.
It's becoming sharper.
I don't quite like what Morozevich did, and now even, you know, f4 now and rook f3.
Yes.
This is what he does,
very
by the way. Rook f3, you bring the other rook to f1 or e1. So you are not rushing, you do not play for attack only.
Yes, this is very comfortable for Magnus, and as black I don't see what should be the plan.
Probably try to... No, I thought try to run like b5, a5, you know, but you might just get mated.
I think he should just try to defend as much as possible the king side,
rook e1 and then f5 played. Knight to e5, rook g7. Other knight to f3 comes to g5. And you can't really play f6 because knight c6 and rook e6. Morozevich is in a huge trouble. I mean, okay, probably he will have to take on e5, which is not a pleasant thing to do. Rook g8. And knight d8, so he wants to protect f7 and then to play f7, f6.
Yes, and also the e6 pawn will be protected.
King h1, f6, knight has to go, And bishop f4.
Oh, suddenly...
Brave Morozevich. He simply takes this pawn. And, well, Magnus is just a pawn down. Knight c5, targeting e6.
He does have very active pieces.
Yeah, that's probably a clever decision not to take the bishop, not to simplify the position, but to try to play at least against the e6 pawn. But as well, if you check, black also has very nice pieces. Well, apart from this knight on d8, but two rooks on g7. Knight on d8 does a great job.
e5, look at that. Expanding in the center, but isn't there 5 pawn?
F5 is hanging. I mean, yeah, it's quite sharp. Probably white has to take on f5. What else to do? But then it's e4.
Yes,
the knight is hanging, and then bishop h2. I'm afraid Magnus is in trouble.
Look at that, Morozevich has just beaten Anand, and now he goes for another world champion.
Queen f5 plate, and it's e4,
and
then he gives the knight,
e4, so this is
and rook e4. And meanwhile, Ryazantsev finished the game against...
Vashier beats Ryazantsev.
So Maxim Vashier-Graf wins against Alexander Ryazantsev.
He climbs up the standings. I think this is the best score Maxim has had here in Doha.
Okay, and it's 2 pawns only for the piece for Magnus Carlsen, but Morozevich's pieces are not very well placed, and I think he blundered. I think he blundered the pawn on f6. After which, white can be worse. In fact, it might be that white is just winning because bishop on h6 cannot be protected. I know he found a way.
Yeah,
so
but
it's still
white has
very
now 3 pawns.
3 pawns. So white most likely is not worse.
Queen d7.
Though it's less than half a minute for Magnus and somewhat more for Alexander Morozevich. Now it's all about endgame technique. That's quite a tense game anyway. I mean, it is as well. Yeah, rook e6. Yeah, well, you don't play normally. The first thing which goes is the blitz skill, but Morozevich says that he does play some blitz, right?
It's just he focuses on blitz and rapid.
Yeah, just that we did not see him very often. King g2 back and king f8, stopping rook e7. Jumping with the knight is very dangerous, remember. Knight e4 now. No, not d7, and then knight e5 check. And hovering around, and sooner or later some fork will be blundered. This is how it works with the knight. King e8, oh, well, even though it looks Morozevich is not in the mood to blunder a fork. King there. Bishop g7, knight d3, offering the rook's exchange. Takes. King takes. And then it's time to expand with the pawns. No, king e4. Check on f4. Sort of unpleasant for black, because black is still doesn't have a serious counterplay, and white keeps expanding. Knight e6. This is interesting.
And you must take. So what is this?
This is very dangerous. I think might be lost for black.
For black.
Might be wrong though. No, but I mean, too many pawns, and black didn't really achieve the blockade yet. c5, right, and then h5 obviously. And then
and he doesn't have time to go to the king's side, right? With bishop h4 and then the g pawn.
Magnus simply pushes the pawns. And then g pawn simply promotes. G pawn simply promotes, and it's d6 now. And then it's d7. He had to play king f8 at least, even though it would be still lost. But
Morozevich resigns.
What an important victory for Magnus Carlsen.
Yes. In a game that was very sharp, he was a pawn down.
He was a piece down at some point.
Then a piece down for 2 pawns.
Yes, so we can say he got lucky a little bit, that Morozevich blundered the pawn on f6. Very important victory, of course.
Sergei Karyakin has beaten Saleh Salem.
So Karyakin wins as well by giving a mate, being a piece down, by the way.
Yeah, we should check it afterwards. And Bosiosic, this is the game that has just finished.
Bosiosic is a draw, right?
That's a draw.
Right, and we can... Yeah, we are looking at the game of Grishuk and Bortnik. I don't know what's going on here. I think looks like, is it a bishop on a1 for Alexander Grishuk?
It
looks like.
This is what they're playing. Oh, there it is, opposite colored bishops.
Yeah, looks like Bortnik is simply beating Alexander Grishuk. Yeah, Alex Bortnik wins against Alexander Grishuk. King c4. What are you doing? King c4. He had to play. This is also winning, of course. It was that so easy. I mean, you play king c4 instead of bishop c4 with bishop on b3, and then white had a king on d6 in this moment, so white cannot move at all, cannot come to the pawns, but of course this is convincing enough.
Well, Alexander Grishuk, the defending champion, loses, so he remains on 6 points out of 10. While Magnus Carlsen and Sergei Karyakin both won their games, they are up to 8.5. They
out of 10.
Yes.
What a result!
Sole leaders, followed by wow, all the players on 7 points dropped, either lost or drew. So followed by Maxim Vachier-Lagrave on 7 points, basically, and other players on 7, but there's no one on more than that.
Yu Yang made a draw. Yu Yang made a draw, so it's 7.5 clear third spot for
1
Yu
point
Yang.
behind the leaders.